So I made this post last month about Palm Bay City Councilman and transparent Nazi Chandler Langevin, but I don't feel like this post adequately articulates the gravity of his conduct. So I want to dive into his post from the last month on Twitter to sort of highlight how out of pocket this crazy son of a bitch is. My favorite thread of the month is probably this one from September 30th, where he says, quote, "A communist anon on X thinks he's going to get me. Adorable." And it's from an exchange I had in his comment section talking about how we were going to take him down for being a Nazi. And a few days later, we had a little bit more fun here when I highlighted some reporting from the Space Coast rocket that showed he lost his position on a board with Odyssey Charter School. He lost his job with Smith Surveying. State Senator Debbie Mayfield called for him to resign and called on Ron DeSantis to suspend him. And a story broke that he had apparently stolen valor by claiming he had been reinstated to the Navy when that was completely false. All those are pretty hilarious in of themselves, but to top that off, there was a call by 4 of the 5 members of the city council, of course excluding him, for him to resign. They're all calling on the governor to remove him. And of course, we did all this on his birthday, October 2nd. But of course, none of this begins to scratch the surface of the tirade he had on Twitter the last month. So I want to dive deeper into that. So here we go. Okay, so I wanted to start the month of tweeting here on the last tweet he made on September 9th. And the reason why I want to start here is because it's from the evening before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So it kind of shows he didn't have like a mental break the morning Charlie was assassinated. And it kind of shows that he's already starting this pattern, that he's already been called out of singling out individual communities, in this case, the Muslim community. And he's done so previously and made media headlines as well in the past for calling out Muslim members of the community. And we'll dive into his prejudice a little bit more here and sort of the irony of this tweet. So let's just make murder illegal, he says. Banning Sharia doesn't mean anything. The only way to actually ban Sharia is to ban Islam. So obviously, even before this tirade this month started, he has a clear disconnect, a clear misunderstanding of the First and 14th Amendment and the way that he as a government official should be treating the disparate communities within his community, within his city, especially those who are already marginalized. And we're going to see a lot of that this month. So if that's something that, bothers you, this might not be your video, but I think everyone should stick around because this is an elected official in the state of Florida. And this is one of the few I've seen openly interacting with folks who describe themselves as fascists and Nazis on the internet. And so I think that it's a unique case to sort of look at for every organizer in the state of Florida. So let's look at his tweets. So on September 10th, he made a post, this should not be a headline in a serious country. We have to regain control now. And it's an anti-immigrant ICE deportation post. And this is obviously before Charlie Kirk was shot. And here you can see his first post after Charlie was shot. And you can see it was made at 3:42 p.m. That's before we knew he was dead at about 4:40 p.m. Eastern time when Trump told the world that. So even just knowing that Charlie had been shot, not knowing the outcome of the shooting, he was already making violent statements that there's no longer a peaceful solution. And then he expounded a bit farther. This is one of the most troubling tweets of the month for me. He said, quote, "The federal government is currently incapable of doing what must be done. The civil war has begun. Either the feds suspend habeas corpus and start doing some wild stuff, or they stand out of our way while we do it for them. There's no longer a peaceful solution." Echoing back to that previous tweet. So what's interesting here is he's an elected official calling for violence, calling for armed groups to target marginalized groups and to engage in violence against them. He's calling for a civil war. This is horrifying from an elected official, and we should all be very, very aware that this guy's making these kind of statements. Here he goes on a little bit further. "I'll be organizing a march through the middle of my city for Charlie, for a bunch of other people, and this is what he's calling the victims of left-wing lunacy. Details to come. All are welcome. Tolerance is over." That's a weird paradox there. All are welcome. Tolerance is over. Okay. "This is the bare minimum. Declare a state of emergency. Every leftist needs to be purged. Every institution. Striking security services." I'm not even going to read this whole tweet's propaganda, but you see the kind of stuff he's pushing out. "I've just been informed by city staff that open carry is officially legal in Palm Bay." It's weird that all this is happening at the same time. We are already working on ensuring all of our officers are aware of this update and receive proper training to ensure our residents employing their God-given rights are treated properly. I'm not going to read the whole thing there either. World War I was started for less. That's fascinating. He thinks that the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was less prominent than their right-wing talking head, Charlie Kirk. Don't really agree, but hey, is what it is. Get ready. And this guy's just making violent tweets, talking about the Spanish Civil War here, National Guards sent to Democrat cities. No, I don't want National Guard sent. I want the Air Force sent. So he's saying bomb these cities is what he's saying, which is insane because 30 to 40% of the population in all of these cities are Republican. So it's just strange, this mindset that he is. And also it's kind of strange. I live in one of the most rural places in the state of Florida, the third least populous county. And this guy lives on the Space Coast in Brevard County in the suburbs. So for him to even have that mentality, like bomb the cities, bomb the suburbs, it's just so weird. Because you usually see that mentality, like that anti-city mentality, play out amongst like rural populations, and never to the extreme of bombing them. But to hear someone from the suburbs doing that is just a little odd for me. And you just see it, just constant violence. Let Charlie Kirk be our last debater. The time for debate is over. Like, this stuff is just haunting to hear. Here's some statement from Palm Bay. What are we looking at here? So this is actually a letter that he sent to Congressman Herodopoulos about releasing a white nationalist from the federal prison system. He wants to get him pardoned. That's something that comes up a lot. Meet Robert Rundo, founder of Active Clubs. I don't know. He's a Nazi and he's trying to get other Nazis freed. It's almost unbelievable. So here's our first flyer we see for his Charlie Kirk march and all victims of left-wing evil. This was really weird. We'll see photos from it later in the month. But we're only one day after Kirk's assassination here. And, I mean, you just see tons and tons of violent tweets coming out of this guy. And all this was happening unchecked. I called the city attorney, Patricia Smith. I spoke with Councilman Hammer as well. And both of them seemed pretty dismissive before the broader community started speaking out about his behavior here. And I was already bringing up a lot of this stuff about his anti-left-wing language, how that's could be unlawful viewpoint bias by a government official. And actually, the post that first caught my eye is coming up here really soon. And it sort of highlights the kind of discriminatory behavior. Here we see Southern imagery. And I'm not here to say that everyone who's using this type of imagery under any context is a racist. For example, Ludacris famously wore a Confederate flag outfit, and I don't think that he's racist. But in the context here of being called out for racism, to use these symbols and to use phrases like the South will rise again, I feel like is playing into certain tropes. And I don't know if he's doing it intentionally. It would seem so. He's intentionally trying to signal to others to dog whistle, if you will. And all of this is unity, or calling for unity with evil. Do not make peace with evil, destroy it. You see almost every single one of these tweets he's making has violent undertones, tones that should make communities who are marginalized feel that they may be in danger. And this is actually one of the greatest examples of that, is Antifa training at your range/shop. And this was actually the first photo I see. So you've got the traditional Antifa logo from the 1930s. You've got the Iron Front logo, which is, of course, the three arrows. You've got Black Power Fist, someone throwing away a Nazi logo, which he calls anti-white. You see the Defend Equality. He calls that armed trans, which apparently is a threat. These are things that he's calling dangerous. And the most troubling, this one here, YPG, is actually a militia that are allies of the United States in the fight against ISIS. So there are actually many instances, not only of U.S. personnel photographed fighting alongside YPG personnel, but also wearing their patches in solidarity. So there may be servicemen in the United States with combat records who may be wearing a YPG patch because they fought alongside YPG in the fight against ISIS. So for a sitting city councilman to be targeting that group in particular has serious, I would say, national security implications. And down here we see some other signs of organizations he's calling local anti-white militias, which of course is absurd. The majority of every single one of these organizations is majority white. And here you have the logo for the Socialist Rifle Association, some organization I don't recognize. The Democratic Socialists of America, which is hilarious to me. I'm pretty sure most of them are anti-gun. Then you have the Northeast Florida, the Jacksonville SRA logo, and the John Brown Gun Club. And you'll see that this guy has a weird fascination with John Brown as we keep going. And of course, he's concerned with phrases like punch Nazis, make racists afraid again, or under no pretext. And of course, that under no pretext is a Karl Marx quote related to firearms rights for working individuals. Here you see his flyer again. Our entire message in church today was about Charlie Kirk. Man, I feel really bad for the congregation there, is all I've got to say. This guy's posting Revolutionary War imagery. Don't really have a problem with that, just in the context that he's trying to aim that type of imagery towards marginalized Americans, not some hostile threat to the democratic or constitutional order in the United States. And here he starts making complaints about what he calls incompetent military leadership. And he does that a lot here too, which for someone who was kicked out of the military for insubordination, I'm not really surprised he harbors these feelings. And I mean, here you just see it, dismantle Antifa, mass deportations, bring back ban transgenderism. That's just horrifying. What is this guy's deal? And here he's talking about open carry, and that's going to come up again here as we get to photos of his actual march. And here's one last thing where you see it. Pick the name of one victim of soft on crime policies, inept military leadership, or illegal immigration. Write their name on a sign and print it out if possible. Bring Christian and patriotic flags. And it's interesting to see which flags showed up there too. And here we just have a bunch of far-right propaganda. I'm probably scrolling right past some of the most horrifying tweets. Here he is shaming John Brown, as I said. John Brown will get publicly hung on 9/16. We must ban transgender operations in Florida. They commit suicide and violent acts at a much higher rate than the average person. Absolutely absurd. More neo-Confederate imagery. And here we start to see anti-Indian commentary. This is absolutely absurd. We should start deporting Indians. Why are we allowing a third world invasion? And this starts a point where he starts railing against Indians in a way I can't really describe. Here's another one of his attention Americans, look out for these symbols, calling them dangerous. That's an anarchist A, of course, an Antifa logo, armed trans flag, or that's actually an LGBT flag in general, a gay pride style, not trans. Black Lives Matter movement, Iron Front, SRA, and again, YPG. I don't understand why he's going after YPG. Those are allies of Uncle Sam. That's horrifying, dude. You're a veteran. You should know better than this. Oh, this one's funny to me. When they ask you what's an American, it's a long story about a Confederate who was shot 5 times. I decided to troll him a little bit and let him know that Americans are the ones who shot him 5 times. India is not our friend. More of these anti-India posts. We must address the Indian question. This to me was one of the most horrifying posts I've seen, and this is when I started communicating with the city about his toxic posts, because the Indian question directly alludes to the way Nazis and other far-right anti-Semites in fascist Europe referred to Jewish people, and more specifically towards the Holocaust and the policies that led to it. So I feel like anytime an elected official is knowingly using this language, trying to dog whistle folks who support things like that, it's pretty haunting. And I mean, this guy has some of the worst posts I've ever seen, much less from an elected official. Oh, here's the first time I got his attention. Apparently, Trump just declared me personally a domestic terrorist. Report away. This is an extremely stupid use of government resources if any of his supporters did report me, especially considering I sent several emails to the FBI, to the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division of the Middle District of Florida about his posts. So they're well aware that I am concerned about what's going on here. So I don't know what use reporting me to them would do. I certainly am not breaking any laws. And here you just see continued hatefulness. And finally, we see photos from his march. You've got armed security here. Up here, you've got a picture of them marching. You see that Chandler himself is carrying a firearm. It's a SIG P226. And there you've got armed folks on both sides, both carrying sidearms. I did not see any long arms, so that's just worth noting. I'm not sure what the legality is of carrying long arms as far as rifles and shotguns in the state of Florida is right now, but I'm assuming under McDaniels v. State it would also be considered legal. But just something to keep in mind is that they are marching armed after using all this violent language. And I spoke with Patricia Smith, the city of Palm Bay's attorney, about this, and she said, it's his constitutional right. He has the same right as everyone else under McDaniels and under Pardo to, exercise his right to open carry in the state of Florida under the latest court rulings. But I would argue that he has repeatedly used language meant to demean and dehumanize and intimidate members of the community, and that now him and his friends are engaged in an organized march. And there are both state and federal laws designed to go after organized attempts to deprive marginalized communities of their rights, such as the Ku Klux Klan and other historic organizations who've engaged in similar behaviors. And I think that in this case, the state of Florida, the state attorney's office of the 18th Judicial Circuit, and the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Palm Bay Police, as well as FDLE and the FBI, should be looking very carefully at his behavior here for civil rights violations and for any applicable state statutes that are designed to protect people in these kind of situations. Here you can see a Confederate flag flying in the background and a SIG prominently displayed. He's using a Jefferson Davis quote. So I guess that's one of the Christian and patriotic flags they're flying. Much sarcasm. And here you just see him bragging about the U.S. Department of War, pretending to change its name. Of course, it's really the Department of Defense for those who are not in foreign policy circles. Leftists are evil. There's no unity with evil. I mean, this guy has spent an entire month preaching violence. And his community finally spoke out. The Indian community especially spoke out very loudly. You had leaders from both conservative and Democratic members of the community, and just a lot of folks speaking out against this kind of horrible rhetoric and this horrible type of organizing going on by Chandler Langevin. And in fact, in the last month, he's been the subject of two separate meetings, actually technically two regular meetings complaining about what he's done, and then a special meeting that was turned into a town hall just where people raise their grievances. Here, of course, he's doing the range stuff again. We'll see that one more time before the end of the month. And he posts the strangest, like this, go on the offense, and then it shows Robert E. Lee and the Confederate flag and Confederate troops in the background as well. If I'm not mistaken, I think I put Gettysburg. Yeah, 7 years ago, and then the cemetery at Gettysburg, to just remind that was the darkest period in United States history. And while the outcome of that war was ending slavery, and I think it will be hard to say that it wasn't one of the greatest achievements, it is absolutely horrible that anyone would want to go back to that terrible, terrible era in the United States. Not just when slavery was legal or when a country fought to preserve slavery or a wannabe country, but when so many people, so many young men who had no economic interest in slavery died to preserve the interests of the planter elite in the South. And I find that disturbing. I find it disturbing that we spend any time or any energy at all promoting those leaders from the historical South, especially when we have leaders like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. and so many other civil rights leaders and historical leaders in the South who did not believe in slavery. And so I think that we've reached a point where a lot of these folks who do revere these figures are feeling the pressure and going overboard to sort of preserve their legacy when others are shaming them. So this is his first letter rebuking him from the city council. And it basically says that diversity is their strength. They're mad about what he's saying about leftists and Indians and everyone else. And he says, I wholeheartedly disagree. Diversity is not our strength. I mean, this guy is absolutely awful. And I know it's kind of boring to sit here and scroll through a month of this guy's tweets. Here we are finally on the A Communist Anon thinks he's going to get me adorable. And you just sort of get the idea that this is one of the most dangerous elected officials we have ever seen. Here's the letter from Debbie Mayfield. I mean, this is just awful. Here, Angie Nixon spoke out against him. Angie Nixon is one of the best, in my opinion, politicians in the state of Florida. She's one of the ones who's remained committed to the grassroots, not just used our language and used our interest when it's election time. She's actually fought when it's unpopular, taken the hit. And the only way she's been able to maintain political power is because we, the grassroots, have stood by her. So anyone who's done that, we just got to keep doing that because Angie really, she's the real deal. She's out of Jacksonville. She's not seeking re-election in the state house, but I think we're going to hear some great things from her in the near future. This is one of the posts that got sent to the governor by the city attorney, and it's immediate actions for near ambush, and it describes what a Marine's supposed to do if they're engaged, and how they respond. And here you see October 2nd, today's his birthday, and all he wants is for Donald Trump to revoke every Indian visa and deport them immediately. That is just insane. And this day, October 2nd, is really interesting because it's the day, not only his birthday, but the day that the Indian community came forward and spoke at the regular meeting. And here you can see some of the speakers there, but it's just his Nazi militia folks speaking. Here's Jennifer Jenkins. I'm not going to highlight her too much because her October 7th statement was so terrible she needs to drop out of the race. But he's calling her the person behind all this, which is funny because it took her quite a while to actually jump on board. And here's the letter to Ron DeSantis has officially been written. It's actually pretty good. And now he's bragging that that was included in the letter. I mean, this is just silly. This whole thing, the fact that he even got to power is silly. This is the letter being sent. One of the things I find most interesting is on this page right here. And it describes how the guy he's asking to be pardoned is leader of a combat-ready militant group of new nationalist white supremacy and identity movement. And it describes the case United States v. Rundo and describes the dangers that guy's engaged in and sort of highlights the kind of unsavory characters that this guy is running around with. And here he is again, Rob Rundo. He goes on about this for a while this week. And you just get the idea, pardon Rob Rundo immediately. This guy makes violent posts asking for neo-Nazis and white supremacists to be pardoned. He attacks political leaders of the minority, which that's to be expected. That's not really too bad. But realistically, this is one of the most dangerous elected officials in the state of Florida. It would be terrible to see him make it to the state house or, God forbid, the United States House of Representatives. So everyone just needs to keep their eyes out for him. Like here on October 5th, he's posting Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon. And a couple minutes later, I got him with this one right here. And I don't really know what to say about the imagery this guy's pushing. It's definitely violent, definitely represents fall of the constitutional order as we know it. He says things like, let's suspend habeas corpus. Here's some more neo-Confederate imagery. It's often the same imagery. You'd think he'd have like more than one or two memes to post, but I guess, you know, when you're that historically defeated. And here he's like, legal immigration is detrimental to this country. So he's not just against illegal immigration. And this is the thing that every minority community should be aware of, even second and third generation immigrants, is that these guys do not view folks who are brown, folks who do not look American, folks who speak with an accent, folks whose family members speak with an accent, anything that makes them different as true Americans. They have the most toxic mentality. It's been defeated every time it's been tried in history, and we're here to defeat it again. And, you know, I'm proud to join anyone who's here to destroy this mentality in the state of Florida, because we're a hotbed for it, and it's time it's put to a stop. And the best thing that we can do is we can call it out when we see it. We've got to get everyone who is against this kind of speech, everyone who's targeted by this kind of speech, and especially those who can't speak out because they're the most marginalized. And we've got to make sure that everyone is protected in this endeavor. And we're almost to the present day here on his tweets, just sort of getting the idea of the terrible, toxic things that he tweets. And I really just wanted to get a chance to go around and say it. And we'll finish it off with his statement where he basically says he isn't sorry. And I'm not going to read it all because I'm not going to give him that kind of attention or that kind of time out of my life, but I'm going to let it sit on my screen. To just show that this guy is not at all sorry for his racism. And hopefully in a future video, we'll dive into some of the commentary from the city council meeting and get a good idea of what the community had to say about it, because they are not happy with him either.